Okay, well, good morning, Harris County. It is 10 a.m. It is a Thursday morning, so it is time for the Homegrown Lecture Series. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great talk lined up, just some housekeeping, and you guys are doing a great job. Microphones on mute, videos off to save bandwidth, and I think if you've been here before, that is working really well. So that is great. Um, Presentation will be recorded. I did hit the record button, so we are up and running with that. And just a reminder, you will receive a survey later on today. And we do appreciate your feedback with that. It does help us. And you will also receive in that email a link to the video, which will be this presentation will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So, and just a reminder for the team in the background, Julie, Shannon, and Susan, just keep an eye on the lobby. If people come in late, just click them on in. So that would be great. Okay, so here is our lineup for October. So this is the end of September. We have been doing this for 5 months now. If you asked us back in January that we would be doing online lecture series, we would have said it's a good idea, but probably won't fit in. But this is completing our 5th month. So we want to thank you all for your support. So next week, you get me again. I will be talking on cool season color annuals. We're getting into that season. I think maybe by Thursday next week, we might have morning temps down in the 60s. So that might be perfect timing. On the 8th, Mr. Shannon Dietz is going to talk about Pig Out, Know Your Pork. His beef talk went over so well. A lot of comments were folks wanted more information on pork and some of the other meats out there. So he is going to talk about the cuts of pork. On the 15th, Brandy Keller will be talking about Cool Kid Plant Projects. That was supposed to be today's topic. We had to do some adjusting to the schedule, but you will get to see that one. On the 22nd, the holidays aren't far away, so we've reached out to our family and community health agent, and Amanda Cripple will be talking about food safety. So I think this will tie in nicely with our overall the vision for the homegrown series. And then we've got 5 Thursdays in October, so you will get Brandy again on the 29th, and she will be talking about wildlife friendly garden tips. So we've got a full month of October planned. That will be our 6th month, and we do, like I said, we do appreciate you guys joining us every week. So today, I will be talking about Texas Superstar Plants. This is a program that's been in the state of Texas, part of AgriLife Extension and AgriLife Research since about the mid-90s or so. And it really took off probably after around 2000, 99, 2000, somewhere in there. So a little bit of background. Everybody knows Texas is a big, diverse place for plants. And if you look at the image here on the left-hand side, here's our zone maps. So we can see that Texas, and this is probably maybe a little dated because I think parts of this are now going to be zone 10 down there. But just for our purpose, we're seeing zone 6A through zone 9B. So that is quite a diverse area in order to grow plants. We're talking up in 6A, 6B. You know, we've got very cold temperatures, very cold winters, and where we're at down in 9A, 9B, we're talking tropical. So, finding plants that perform across those climatic regions is a challenge. If we look at
Paul,
the
I just see you. I do not see your screen. Have you
no,
shared your screen?
yes. Is anybody else having an issue seeing the screen?
No, I see the screen.
Everybody else sees it? Okay, so what you might want to do is log off
Yeah, I'll
and
just log out and log back in.
log back in. Yeah, everybody else is. I'm seeing people are saying they can see it. So yeah, just log out and log back in and try it that way. Okay, so our image here on the right-hand side is precipitation. So we've got climatic challenges for these plants, and we've also got precipitation challenges. So if we're looking in West Texas, we're looking at average rainfall under 14 inches. And then we go from west to east, and we're in East Texas, we're looking at above 54 inches. So finding plants that work in a diverse geographic range, climatic, and precipitation can be quite challenging. And so if it is a Texas superstar, it will work in these various regions, various areas. And so that is the challenge. So how do we do that? We have trial sites. So initially there is a group, there is a board that brings these plants in. And really they're not, it's not new genetics, it's genetics that's been out there. It's plants that, sort of catch our interest. The plants have to look good. They have to look good in a container. They have to be readily available to the public. So we've got to make sure that they can either be propagated or there's a good source of seed. And it's the worst thing you want to do is come out with a program and a plant in that program and it's not available. So the growers, we've got to have that relationship with the growers that they're going to put this product into their product mix and make it available to the public. So in order to cover those ranges, you can see there's 4 initial testing sites: College Station, San Antonio, Overton, and Lubbock. And as the plants make it through the system, as they're getting ready to be released, they will then provide a sample of these plants to the agents so we can bring them back into our own areas and grow them out so we can give them some feedback as to how these plants are going to perform. So it takes a while for a plant to become a Texas superstar, but you can feel confident that if it has that label, if it has that logo on it, which you see up here in the upper corner, that plant has been tested across multiple areas within the state of Texas, and it's going to do what we claim it's going to do, and it's going to be a winner and in most cases a no-brainer landscape. So there is a website, texassuperstar.com. It's a great resource. There is a new booklet out. I'm going to hold this up here. If you want to come to, interesting here. If you want to come to the office, you can pick one up. They are free, or you can download it or check it out online, but there's a lot of good information there, growing tips, retailers that carry Texas Superstars. So by all means, and I'm not going to cover every plant, I'm covering highlights, but if you are interested in it, you can find more information there. Okay, so let's talk about the new additions for 2020. Even though 2020 has been a rough year with the pandemic and everything else, and working differently, there have been some really good additions to the Texas Superstar program in 2020. The first is this great blue low-growing plant, blue flower, Evolvulus, blue Daze. You're going to see this in the, you want to use this in the front of the bed. It also does well in containers. So if you are doing combinations, it would be a great spiller. It would be great in hanging basket. If you're along the coast, it's very salt tolerant. You can tell that foliage is a little thick and it's got some pubescence on it, so it will hold up if you're along the coast. Landscape height is going to be about 9 to 18 inches, but this it starts blooming in the spring and will bloom throughout the entire summer. And that blue color, everybody likes that blue. It's got a great cooling effect to it. So, consider Evolvulus blue Daze as something to, bring a different color into the landscape and a nice overall growth habit. Now, Purslane or Portulaca, I love this plant. I think it's underused. Again, another low-growing plant, so this would, be in the front of the bed also. And the color on Portulaca is electric. You could in this one, it's got that fuchsia look. There are singles, but there are doubles out there. And the good thing about these is if you've got a hot area, full sun, by all means consider putting in Portulaca. A couple series that are out there are Cupcake and Rio Grande. Once it is established, it is drought tolerant because it has that almost succulent type foliage. The biggest beef I have with this plant is in some of the garden centers, they will have this plant in the shade. And the problem with that is the flowers don't open, so you don't get that wow effect. The good garden centers, they will have this out in the full sun, and when you walk into that garden center, you will be drawn to that plant immediately because of that electric color. So Portulaca or Purslane is also a new one for 2020. Pentas, gotta love them. They love the heat of the summer. They bring in beneficial insects. They bring in the butterflies, clusters of these star-shaped flowers, and the color range on these is really expanding. And also the height. So you can have there are series out there that are 6 to 8 inches tall. And there are series out there that are 12 to 18 inches tall. You could use them as a cut flower. So there's a lot of diversity in this genus with regard to where you can use it in the landscape. We did some trials early on when we were still over at Bear Creek. We had some sticky cards out in order to see what beneficials we were attracting. Long-legged flies, any of the Ophidius, which will attack the parasitic wasps that attack aphids. We were catching them on there. So the great thing about this is it has a pollen source. It also has nectar down in those flowers. So you get the additional value added of bringing in those beneficials and the butterflies and even some of the hummingbirds. So Pentas, great for the heat of the summer and in full sun. Now here's a Petunia. So here is Tidal Wave Red Velour. And this is, look at the flower production over the entire plant. So I like, Petunias to me do best early spring for us, even after the first of the year. They are hardy in our cool weather. And Tidal Wave Red Velour joins one of a previous Texas superstar, Tidal Wave Silver and Cherry. The tidal waves are the largest of the wave series. So these can get up to 2 feet tall, which is quite tall. This is not for the faint of heart. This plant, once it starts growing and establishes, is going to cover some space. So, if you're a landscaper, you've got a large area that you've got to cover. Tidal waves are really ones that you want to consider because you don't need as many plants and you can cover quite a big an area. They'll do great in containers on their own. The one thing about the tidal waves is since they are so aggressive and so large, they will hold up into the heat of the summer. They'll look pretty rough. They'll look pretty ratty. I think a lot of times you just get tired of looking at them because they've just been in bloom for so long and you want to change them out and get something else in. But when we get into our cool weather, these petunias do extremely well here. Cuphea, Mexican heather. This variety is Allyson. Everybody knows Cuphea, very tight, low-growing plant. Very nice contrast with the foliage and the flowers, and it gets these tiny, not tiny, but and there are some varieties that the flowers are getting a little bit larger, but these rose purple flowers, but when they bloom en masse. So there is a lot of them. So there's a lot of flower power on this. Again, this is another one, prefers full sun. You can grow it in the shade, but you're probably not going to see the flower production on it. Morning sun and then afternoon shade is fine, or vice versa. But the more sun, the better the flower production is going to be on this. You're going to use this probably in the front of the bed also, because of that low growing, tight spreading habit on it. Okay, so that covers our new additions for 2020. So let's talk about some of the other favorites that I have in this group. Some of the other Texas superstars that are out there that I know you can be successful with if you put them into your landscape. Salvias, and salvias. We've got salvias. So it depends on what you're looking for. Again, that nice blue color that you want to bring into the landscape. So if we start here on the left, we've got Mystic Spires Blue. And this is an improved variety. So they came back out, I'd say about 8-9 years ago with Mystic Spires, and then they've improved it. It's a little bit more compact. I've got this image here down below is at my house, and this thing is just nonstop bloomer. I'm really happy with it. I come through. I've sheared it twice, and about 4 weeks later, the first flower spikes come back again. So don't be afraid with some of these perennials to go out there, give them a haircut, shear them up, and allow that new growth, a new flush to come, because you're going to get even more flowers on it. The bees love it. I've always got bumblebees out there working this plant. I've seen some moths on it. I see the butterflies. So it's a great pollen source, and it's going to bring in that, those pollinators and beneficials into the garden. The next one here in the middle is Salvia leucantha. So this is the Mexican bush sage. And this one is going to bloom, starts late summer and through fall. So the one thing you can see, there's trends here. And if you look through these, the plants on this list, you can have nonstop color year round if you just had a landscape with Texas superstars. They perform extremely well, and you can have flower or interest in the garden year round. So Salvia leucantha, a little bit more upright habit. All right, this is going to top out at about 4 feet. And you can see the flower spikes are a little bit different. In certain cases, the calyx might be whitish, so you got a contrast with that purple flower and the white petals on it. The purple petals on it. And once established, this is drought tolerant. When you go out to San Antonio, you see this used quite often, and it performs extremely well out there. And then the last one we have here it was a found plant by Greg Grant, and it's a Farinacea. This is Henry Dolberg, and this is another nonstop bloomer. So these salvias can give you that bluish purple color throughout the entire summer. And this is another one. You want to give it a shear maybe through the season just to give it a break, because it's just nonstop blooming. And it's very low maintenance. 3 to 6 feet is probably, in most cases, once it's established, it's going to be easily 6 feet consistent. But these are all very strong bloomers, and they're great perennials to have in the landscape. So we've also got hibiscus, hardy hibiscus. So this is the Hibiscus moschutos, and these are the flare hibiscus. So these were bred by Dr. Moy, who had worked out at the San Antonio Botanical Garden. And they're very consistent in height, in shape, and flower production. So if you want nice, bold, gaudy flowers, the flare hibiscus are ones to consider. Probably more in our area, about 6 feet tall. But the flowers are, as they always say with these moschutos, dinner plate size. So flare was the original. This is the red on the left-hand side here. And then we've got across the way, we've got pink flare. So you could see how those flowers open up, face out. You can't miss them. They're only open for a day. So, but there's usually so much flower production on them that it is nonstop. And then the third one here is I really like this look with what we call peppermint flare. So it's got that nice dark fuchsia pink eye, and then it's got some blushing in it, and then it's got this flecking and these striations through the petal, which is really unique for these hibiscus. So three great hardy hibiscus, great perennials. Put them in the back of the bed because they are big, they are large, but they are showstoppers also. So keep those in mind. Now, if you need some yellow in the landscape, why not consider Tacoma Stan's Gold Star? Uh, Again, a summer bloomer through the heat, nonstop. These great tubular trumpet-like flowers all through the heat of the summer. Landscape height, I've got down 4 feet, but honestly, when you see them in the landscape, they're probably going to be more in that 4 to 6 foot range. Again, this is one, if you want to shear it, you can do that. You can keep it in place, and it will come back and bloom for you during the rest of the season. The semi-evergreen means that if we get an extremely cold snap, it will die, but it can die back to the ground, but it normally comes back without any problems. And if you're in an area, if you've got land somewhere and you've got problems with deer, this is a plant that you could put out there that is quote unquote deer resistant. So the deer don't always read these descriptions that we put in there. I'm sure if they're hungry enough, they might nibble on it, but it has shown deer resistance in the landscape. Here's another great yellow flower. This shrub is evergreen. And I remember we had this over at Bear Creek when we were there, and this thing would just bloom throughout the entire spring, summer, early fall. And depending on how cold we got, you would see sporadic flowers on it. I really like this Styralis, Galphimia glauca. It gets these spikes, and you can see it blooms from the bottom and works its way up that spike. And it's a really nice look. It's got a mounding, rounded habit overall. And the plant is just very low maintenance. Just plant it and forget it. I think a lot of times we kill them with kindness, and just plant it, get it started. Once it's established, that plant is usually going to perform extremely well on its own and not have any issues. But take a look at Styralis. Even in the container, it will be covered in blooms. So you can't miss this when you're in the garden center. All right, so how about some ornamental grasses? We've got that. We've got these hybrid pennisetums. Common name is Napier grass. Now, the thing that's great about these are they've got this broad or a wide blade with their foliage, and so it gives a really nice look architecturally and structurally in the landscape. It's got that arching vase-shaped habit. Once they're established, they're very heat and drought tolerant, and they give a nice color, nice contrast. So, if you could see that in some of the yellow plants that we just talked about, the Tacoma or the Thryallis, and this was next to it, that yellow would definitely pop against that, maroon, burgundy, chocolate type foliage. Black stockings, which is here on the left, is also another new plant for 2020. And this one, make sure you've got space for it because it is going to get 8 to 10 feet tall. So this is going to be a big plant, but you can see how that foliage can sort of just hang over some of the other plants down below it. And when the wind blows, you're going to get a nice, it gives you a dynamic look in the landscape. It's not static. It's going to be a dynamic look. The other one that came out probably about 2-3 years ago is down here on the right-hand side is Princess Caroline. So the look is the same. It's just a little bit tidier, a little bit smaller, a bit more compact. Now, in most cases, if we were up in Dallas, I would say these are annuals up there. They probably won't overwinter. For us down here, depending on how cold we get, these can perennialize. They'll come back from year to year. I've got Princess Caroline at the house, and I'm on the second year with it. So I've been pretty happy with how this has performed. They don't put out flower spikes or seed heads. It's just this foliage, and this is actually breeding out of the University of Georgia. So these hybrids are really, they give you a nice look. And even now, this time of year, as we're getting into the fall season, if you had these in containers, I would probably not black stockings. Princess Caroline could probably go in a container. It's going to give you a nice look if it's in a larger container. All right. Another summer bloomer, Angelonia, also called summer snapdragon. It's not a snapdragon. It's not even in the same family, but it gives you that snapdragon look in the heat of the summer. Angelonia angustifolia has a nice mounding habit, and then these flower spikes come up above the foliage, and they present themselves really nice. And once it's planted and established, put this in the spring, and then all summer up until, the cold weather sets in, you're going to have flower production on this. Colors range. What we're seeing here is this is a series of Serena, and this is down at our Genoa Friendship Garden in the gardens now. So this is Serena. This is on the right, left-hand side is blue improved, and on the left, and then on the right is purple improved. So you can see the contrast in that color. 12 to 16 inches, it's going to be maybe in the front or mid border, depending on other plants that you've got on it. But it gives you that nice, that look. Now the flowers aren't as large as snapdragons, but it gives you that flower spike. It gives you that feel. And there are some other varieties out there now that the flowers are even a little bit larger. And we had a discussion with another group that, we're starting to look, some people are starting to cut these and use them as a cut flower. So you can cut a few of these, put them in a vase, bring them in the house, and see how they hold up. But great color range and a really strong performance in our summer heat. Now, this is the Whopper series. And these guys, if you want big, bold, bodacious plants and flowers, consider the Whopper begonias. So this is the picture of the plant, the whole plant here on the left. This is at my house in a container. I have them on either side. And you can see the size of the foliage, the size of the flowers. Here's an up close of that flower. So, begonias are really versatile, and a lot of the seed companies are now out with these larger types. And so they work great in containers, but they also work well in the landscape. Again, this is something that's going to be bold looking and definitely catch your eye. Now the series, there are bronze foliage ones and then the green. So we're looking at the green here. What I would say is on the bronze foliage ones, and even though this is located on the south side of the house, I have quite a bit of shade on that side. So this does not get a lot of direct sun, a little bit in the morning, but then most of the time it's in shade. On the bronze foliage ones, what I would recommend is if you really want that bronze color in the foliage to show up and to give you that contrast with the flowers, it's going to need more sun. The bronzing sort of washes out and isn't as strong and isn't as dominant when it's in the shade. So if you buy the bronze and you really want that bronze foliage, make sure it's getting a lot of sun, and that bronzing will show up much better for you. Here's a vine. All right, so we've got a couple vines in this list, and I really like butterfly vine. This is Muscagnia macroterra. And this is in bloom now. So this is a great vine for the summer heat. It does need some help, so it doesn't have tendrils, so you got to provide it a little bit of support to get going. But you can see these clusters of these yellow flowers. But it gets that butterfly vine name because here's the seed pod. Here it is on the right-hand side, and I just took this last night. And it's so again, you always want interest in your landscape. You want to see things, there's plenty of stuff that blooms in the spring, but what will get you out there even in the summer heat and in the fall? And I know a lot of people will collect these once they're dried, and it's a great project for the kids. They can paint these like butterflies since it's got that look. So if you've got kids, if you've got grandkids, and you're looking for something to do, and you've got some of this vine growing, go out, harvest a couple of these pods, seed pods, and go ahead and let them, be creative with it. And it's a good way to get them in the garden, but to also get them to be creative also. So Muscagnia, great vine for our area. So here's another hibiscus. Now this is a different species. So before we talked about Hibiscus mischutos. Now we got Hibiscus syriacus. This is Althea blue angel. And this is a hibiscus. It is perennial. It's more like a woody shrub, but it has a very upright habit, as you can see here in this image. I've had it in the landscape probably about 4 years now, and all spring through the summer, it puts out these nice light lavender, light blue flowers with a dark red eye. The bees, if the bees aren't working the salvia that I have, they're over here working these flowers. So it's great, especially if you're in tight spaces that you want a little bit of height, but you don't want a plant that's going to get super wide for you. This Hibiscus syriacus blue angel might fit the bill for you. Celosia, an annual, is one that, again, through the heat of the summer, nonstop blooms. This one, the New Look series, has, you can see the foliage on it. So it's got this nice maroon foliage. So even before it starts to bloom, you've got some color in there, which is provided by the foliage and by the plant. And then once it starts to bloom, you have this, nice contrast. And when you see this in the full sun, it looks like they're lit on fire against that foliage. So landscape height is about 12 to 16 inches, a warm season annual. But again, the more sun, the better off this plant is going to do. Vinca, one of my favorites. This series is probably my favorite. When I was doing new products, we looked at this before it was even on the market, and that I remember that June was probably one of the wettest Junes. We had rain all but I think 3 days, and we're talking, gosh, early 2000s. And this plant had no disease on it. The competitors that we had next to it, they all turned to mush because of the disease. So the Cora series is resistant to aerial phytophthora, which is a fungus which gets in to the upper part of the plant, and it works its way down, and it kills it off. And the Cora series is resistant to that. Great color range and great growth habit, because the landscape height on the upright forms is about 14 to 18 inches, but there's also Cora Cascade that you can use in hanging baskets or combination planters. That's probably about 10 inches tall, but it's going to get wider. Now, the one thing I do want to give you guys a heads up on is, and you may have seen it already this growing season, but there's now the Cora, what they're calling Cora XDR. XDR is their short definition for extra disease resistance. So like anything else, when the first Coras came out, I think it was only resistant to 1 or 2 types of aerial phytophthora. Now this new one is resistant to more strains. It's like anything else. These fungi change, they mutate, there's new strains, and they were starting to see that some of these new strains were attacking the original Cora. So keep an eye out. Definitely next season for Cora XDR. More disease resistance, but same great colors, great growth habit, and excellent performance in the landscape. Here's an early season perennial, Aquilegia, Texas Gold Columbine. Great name for here. This is going to be a cool season perennial. This is going to come up pretty early, probably about the end of February, depending on how cold we get. But this yellow color just pops early on. And it gets everybody excited. We had it in the gardens at Bear Creek, and once you saw this coming up, you knew spring wasn't far away. So in the winter, you want this in a spot that's going to get full sun. So if you've got it planted in an area where you have a deciduous tree and it's getting that full sun in the winter, that's great. As the season goes on, full sun, this plant's not going to like it. So one of two things can happen. If you've got it where it's planted and it gets some shade, that foliage will stay and grow throughout the entire season. It's a one-shot deal to bloom in the spring, and it's got these shooting star-like flowers on it. But if you've got it in a spot that's full sun through the heat of the summer, it's probably going to die back to the ground because that foliage just isn't going to perform very well. It is disease resistant, not disease, but deer resistant, which is an added plus. But it's a great area. It's a great plant perennial to use for naturalizing an area. When these flowers pop up above that foliage, it puts on quite a show. And the other thing that's nice is if a breeze blows, these blooms are moving back and forth. So it does look like a shooting star if you use your imagination. Another great summer bloomer here is Pride of Barbados. So Caesalpinia, pulcherrima, zone 9. It is deciduous. If you go further south, it could be evergreen. So if you were down in the valley, this is probably an evergreen large shrub, small tree. But the flower production on this, it's an eye stuff. If you're driving down the road at 55, you're going to notice this plant when it's in bloom. Puts up these flower spikes and these clusters of flowers, and that contrast of the orange and the yellow and sometimes some red shades in it, they just really catch your attention. Once it is established, it is very drought tolerant. So this is another plant you see thriving, especially over in San Antonio. But I've seen some really great specimens of this plant in our area, and it just gives you that tropical feel when it is in bloom. Manihot. This is a really great plant. I love this plant. When I first moved to Texas and I was working for the nursery, this was in our new plant area, and I had never seen this plant before. Variegated tapioca. And this is just, we're not growing it for the foliage. So it is this plant back here. It's almost got the foliage almost looks like a schefflera. It looks like the palm with the 5 leaves leaf blades coming out on it. But you've got a nice variegation with that yellow center and then the green contrast against it. And this will get quite large through the heat of the summer, easily 6 to 8 feet. I know at my house when I had it, it would get over 6 feet. And it's just nonstop throughout the entire summer. Cold weather comes, especially we get around 50, it will just defoliate. Depending on how cold we get, it will, turn some of those stems back to mush. But usually there's enough there from the base that it comes back pretty strong. So I never had it die off for me, and I had it in the ground probably a good 4 years. And it would just come back strong year after year. So this is one that, again, another tropical look, no flowers, but great foliage to provide contrast in your beds. We've got some roses. Here's Belinda's Dream. So the thing I like about this is it gives you that look of a hybrid tea, and it's got some fragrance. Landscape height is going to probably top out at about 5 feet. The only knock I have on this one is it's not a self-cleaner, so you're going to have to deadhead. it will hold on to those petals, and they'll get brown and pretty nasty looking. It's not a very good look for it. So it's one that you're going to have to go in and deadhead. But if you want that hybrid tea look, if you want some fragrance, if you want to cut some flowers and bring inside, Belinda's Dream will fit that bill for you. And of course, we've got some Bluebonnets. Here's Texas Maroon. This was a Texas superstar several years back. It is a native spring bloomer. Everybody knows about, the Bluebonnets. If you want to grow some, this is the time of year to get your seed and start to sow it and start to plant them. So they can get through that cold winter, the change in temperatures. We can get some germination early on, get the plants established before the really cold weather comes on, if we get it, and then you can enjoy those plants. But this is a great color break. So this, along with the blues, provides a nice early spring color blast to the bed. Lobularia. If you like alyssum, which alyssum's a cool season plant, so it's one that you're going to start to see in the landscape. Lobularia is its sister, and it provides the same look, the same fragrance, but in the heat of the summer. So very low growing, probably about 6 inches tops, maybe a little bit taller, up to 8. But it's got the fragrance. It loves the full sun. It brings in the pollinators and the beneficials, and it gives you that same look, same performance as alyssum does in the cool season. But now you can have that same look in the heat of the summer. We've got some edibles. So here's Victoria Red Grape. This is about 2 years ago. It is tolerant to Pierce's disease, which is one of the diseases that some of these grapes have. It's caused by the fungus Xylella. It is a table grape. It does have some seeds. It does have seeds, but look at the size of those berries and the size of those clusters. So it's a very good producer once it is established. Again, grapes you're going to want in that full sun. So if you're looking for a table grape, if you've got an arbor, or you've got you've been wondering, can I grow a table grape? Take a look at Victoria Red. And I think this is our last one. So again, on the edible. So this is Arctic Frost. So this is a Citrus reticulata. So it's a Satsuma. And actually, it's a hybrid. It was bred with a Mandarin Changsha tangerine, which is very cold hardy, along with a Satsuma. And then what they got was sweet fruit with some tartness. It's very easy to peel, and it only has maybe 1 or 2 seeds. The tangerine, this Changsha, is very seedy. So they were able to pick up, some of the traits from the Satsuma that had very little seeds. And so this is one that's it is cold hardy. And it's got a nice height, overall mature height. So about 8 to 12 feet. So even if you've got a smaller area, this is something that you can probably fit in, or even in a large container, you can probably grow this and still have some citrus to pick. So with that, I want to thank you guys for joining us. And I guess, Shannon or anybody there, are there any questions that were posted in the chat?
Hey, Paul.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Great job on the presentation. You did have a couple of questions that came across, about 5 questions. So you want me to go ahead and start with the first one?
Let's go for it.
All right. Erica wants to know if Portulaca can work in a window garden box, and if so, what are some tips on soil to use?
Okay, so any kind of planters or combination planters or anything like that, containers, just get a good potting mix. So don't be afraid. Don't skimp on the potting mix. You want something that's good. Honestly, I use the Miracle-Gro mix, and I've never had any issues. So it really just depends on if you've got one that you work with and have been successful with it. get a good mix, and then the Portulaca would work well. Just make sure you're going to have those planter boxes in full sun to really enjoy the flower color on it.
What about drainage or drainage holes or anything on those
Oh,
gourd boxes?
absolutely. Yes. Make sure anytime you do any kind of containers, make sure you've got drainage holes in them. If it's a plastic container, in the past, I've even drilled a few more holes in it just so I know I'm going to get that water going through. You don't have to put any kind of stones in the bottom of it because that actually can cause some other issues. It could cause water to pool in that area. But good potting mix, drainage holes, you shouldn't have any issues with it.
Sounds good. All right. And I guess continuing on container plants, other than Portulaca, what other the plants that you mentioned they would make good container plants?
It really just depends on what you're looking at. If you're tight on space, some of those shrubs you can even put in containers. And you're going to have to prune them a little bit. You're going to have to control them. Those salvias that we looked at, you can use those. Container plants now. We're mixing perennials and annuals together. So the perennials could be that focal point, and then you can change out the colors, the annuals around it. So actually, the great thing about planters and combinations and containers is you really, whatever your imagination is, you can use these plants. Just be aware that if it's a larger plant, the larger the container, the easier it's going to be to maintain. If you're trying to put a plant that's going to top out at 3 to 4 feet and you've got it in a 1-gallon pot, you're going to have problems. So get yourself a good container, a large container. The plant's going to like it. The plant's root system is going to like it, and it's going to be easier for you to manage the watering. I could see large 25-gallon container. Sure. It really, again, it's going to depend on what you're putting in it. For the hibiscus, I've got one at the house, and I guess I have a container that's I would say the diameter on it is probably about 20 to 22 inches, and I would say the height is probably 2.5 to 3 feet tall. So there's a very good there's a lot of soil in there, so it helps that root system. And the plants love it. And even in the heat of the summer, I've got it facing south in full sun. I'm watering it depending at least every other day, sometimes maybe every third day. So again, it's just going to depend on
And a lot
on
of
the plant
time,
and where you have it.
a
Go ahead.
lot of times too, Paul, can't you find that information off of the plant tag whenever you purchase that plant? I mean, of what
Yeah.
expected.
Right. You're going to have, right, regardless of it. The one thing I will say, and I guess I've been living here now for 21 years, is the plants are going to tend to grow a little bit taller than what the label says down here, just because we've got such a long growing season and the conditions are so nice. And I always tell the master gardeners, the plants don't read the labels. So it's a guide. But I always would always tend to, from what I've seen is if we put down, 3 to 4 feet, in most cases, it's probably going to get a little bit bigger, not much bigger, but not a little bit bigger. You might top out at 5 feet if that plant's really thriving, or maybe it's even going to reach 6 feet.
Gotcha.
But there's, again, use your imagination. The great thing about containers is if it doesn't work, you can pull it out and you've got that container and you can try something else with it. And so you can just go from there.
Somebody was asking about specific nurseries in the Houston area for Texas Superstar plants.
I would say, well, if you go to that website, if you go to the Texas Superstar website, it will. I believe there is a tab there that will list retailers in the area. So I think you can. And I haven't been on it in a while, but I don't know if you can put in your zip code or you can just click on the region. You're probably going to see them carried in general, probably more at the retail independents than maybe at the big box stores. Now, you might find those plants at the big box stores, but they may not have the Texas Superstar label in it. So that's another thing. Not all growers participate in the program. They may be producing these plants, but they may not be participating, growing them as Texas Superstars. They may just be growing them as part of their product mix.
Cool. So there was a question that was just posted, and you could probably see it there, talking about the recent rains and so forth like that, asking for a recommendation on a possible Superstar ground cover.
I don't think in that list, and I'll open up here real quick. I don't think there's any, there's Asian jasmine is not considered a Texas Superstar, or there's no ground covers in this list. But what I would say is, right, if it's a spot that you're having trouble, growing turf, there are plenty of ground covers out there, whether it could be some of the low growing ornamental grasses. We see Asian jasmine out there, but there's Vinca major, Vinca minor, there's ficus. So it really just depends on what look you want. How low growing do you want it? Again, as it's establishing, it's going to take a little bit of time. And so you might have to go in and weed that area. But once they are established, the good thing is, yes, it will keep that soil in place. It won't wash out, and it will fill in and give you a nice look and a nice additional texture to the landscape.
So this is going back to the container question again, and I think you kind of answered this earlier, but they ask about grapes and mandarins being grown in containers. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm sure that just relates back to the size and so forth. So,
right, the larger the pot, the better. Have it in a spot where you can live with it, that you don't have to move it. If you're gonna, I think I saw something posted about a 25-gallon pot or something like that. It's going to perform much better for you in a larger pot. You may have to add some soil to it over the years because there's going to be some compaction. So you might have to do some work with it, but some of these citrus you can turn into patio. They can be patio citrus, and you can enjoy the look, enjoy the fragrance of the flowers when they bloom, and then also enjoy the fruit at the end of the season.
I've seen quite a few key lime do really well in container gardenings and so forth like that as well too.
Yep, limes, certain lemons, kumquats. Yeah, it is definitely doable. Yep.
Okay. That pretty much wraps up the questions on this end, Paul.
Okay. Well, great. So first of all, I want to thank you all for joining us. I saw a question. You will get a link to this when you get the survey. There will be a link to the YouTube channel for this video. And if not, if you go, I forget the name of it. I don't know if we are called Harris County Horticulture. Julie, do you know the name of our YouTube page? I see you blinking there.
Yes, it's called Harris County Extension Horticulture, and there is the little icon is a picture of flowers and fruits and vegetables, and you just click on that and you can view all of our videos.
Okay. So you can find it that way, or when you receive the survey from me, there will be a link to this video, and then you can bookmark that page. You can subscribe to our page, so anytime we add something new to it, you'll automatically get an email saying, hey, there's something new on that website, in case you missed us. So just quick again, our October list is up. It's ready to go. Registration is open. So I think we've got a lot of fun topics and a lot of good topics lined up for October. Again, I want to thank you all. We appreciate you supporting us. And you guys all have a great week, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.